All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. If you've been watching along and enjoying our content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all your support. We're diving into week 6 here. We're already almost to conference play. Quite a few big games, some good games. Cody, I'll let you take it away with your initial thoughts and your game of the week.
Yeah, I guess the before Saturday it was like kind of a lighter week. There was obviously a few good games in the mix, like UConn with their win over Florida, was a very interesting game, an interesting like clash of styles, and like UConn had to kind of win with their jump shooting, while Florida was able to stay in that game with their ability to get all over the offensive glass. I mean, they rebounded 43% of their misses, 16 offensive rebounds, and Xavier Lee like really stepped up in that game when Boogie Flan went to the bench with 2 fouls, and then when he went to and then he came back in and picked up a third, and Lee was able to really be the best player on the floor in that first half. He finished the game with 19, 6 rebounds and 5 assists. Like, it was kind of his breakout where he looked a lot more comfortable. I think part of that was just him having the ball in his hands more often as like the lead guard. That's where he's going to be more comfortable. He just hasn't been comfortable all year playing off the ball, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out in conference play with Fland and Lee on the floor. Like, how comfortable can they get throughout the course of the year? But Lee showed that there are at least flashes of him being able to like belong at this level. So I was fairly encouraged by that. But ultimately, like, UConn at full strength was able to get the job done. They put Florida in some really like tough spots defensively with their movement off of screens. Like Braylon Mullins in the stretch that he was actually playing in the game, he picked up 5 fouls in 11 minutes. But when he was on the floor, he was really, really good. Tommy Howe kind of had to chase him off screens, and Mullins had a ton of success. Like, he looked like he has all of the tools to be a really key player for this team down the stretch of the season, if he can stay out of foul trouble, because it seemed to be somewhat of an issue for him, for a guard especially. Like, picking up those cheap fouls isn't something you want to see all year long. But this team at full strength showed that they're a national title contender. Florida also showed me some stuff, obviously, with the backcourt, like gaining some progress, and in the front court obviously showed that they can dominate anybody. UConn's a good defensive rebounding team, and they were able to kind of hammer the glass. So that was a pretty good game, a really good clash of styles there. And then the game on Thursday, Iowa State taking down Iowa. I really liked what I saw from Iowa, just kind of proving that they can hang around with some of the big boys in the country. Like, against Michigan State, I did get a little bit worried with how badly they got hammered on the glass, but they faced another really good front line of Joshua Jefferson and Blake Buchanan, and they held their own in that regard. And they had a few other guys step up throughout that game. Bennett Sturts looked a little more comfortable than he looked against Michigan State. Was able to knock down shots at a higher clip. But yeah, I was fairly encouraged with what I saw from Iowa, like, just because of how great Iowa State's been this year, particularly shooting the ball, and how great their offense has been. That was an encouraging sign for me. And just a couple of games from the weekend, like just a few overtime games that were just very fun to watch. I guess it starts with Kansas over NC State in overtime at NC State. It was the Melvin Council, really just the Melvin Council game. Like, Kansas, well, NC State went from leaving Melvin Council wide open and forcing him to beat them to, we kind of need to get the ball out of this guy's hands. Like, when Darren Peterson went to the bench with his cramping or quad injury or whatever, I'm not completely 100% sure on what it was, but he wasn't able to be out there. But Council had the ball in his hands, like, consistently. They were leaving him open at times, but down the stretch, like, there were a few possessions where, like, hey, we got to get the ball out of this guy's hands. Like, it was pretty impressive to watch. I mean, Darian Williams obviously almost willed them to a win in overtime, but at the end of the day, Melvin Council's performance was big time. And a couple of other fun overtime games. Butler and Providence in double overtime was just an offensive battle, an absolute shootout. That was a super fun game. Michael Ajayi, one of the most underrated transfers in the cycle, coming from Gonzaga. He's in a much more comfortable situation now at Butler. I'm very impressed with what I've seen from him this year. And then Ohio State against West Virginia was a super fun double overtime game as well. But yeah, those are probably my main takeaways, my favorite games to watch throughout the week.
Yeah, right on. Marcus, what are your takeaways? What are your games of the week that you really enjoyed watching?
Yeah, I mean, I think my game of the week was that Florida UConn game, but Cody hit on a bunch of that. I was gonna first bring out Melvin Council if Cody didn't get to it, but man, like he was like Melvin Curry by the end of the night. He was going like one dribble, pull up threes, super impressive. And then he's finishing acrobatically in the lane when they're hard closing out on him. It was impressive. So, props to him. Like you said, Darian Williams, he scored 11 straight with the 3 to tie it at the end of regulation and then into overtime. So he had a nice run there himself, but ultimately wasn't enough. NC State, sits at 7-4. They haven't really won a key game yet. They don't have a really good win on their schedule yet. So, something we talked about through the offseason, how we weren't maybe as high on that team as other people were. They had their opportunity to pick up a pretty good win against Kansas at home and weren't able to get the job done. But, I'll talk a little bit more about that Iowa State game. That game was really Iowa really mucked it up, like we talk about with that team in that first half in particular. They held Iowa State to 25 in the first half. It's 33-25, and that's with Iowa State. Like they still took care of the ball very well. They just were shooting a very poor percentage. Iowa just kind of making it a little bit tougher on them, making them play more in the half court. And like Iowa State, like I said, only 9 turnovers in this game against an Iowa defense that likes to speed you up, turn you over. So that was at least a positive from Iowa State. But of course, couldn't make a shot. But then they come out in the second half, start at 10-0, ended up sort of pulling away a little bit. It really felt like at that point Iowa State was going to kind of run away with it. But Iowa really just sort of battled, hung around, and kept things interesting, and made enough shots, mucked it up enough, despite 16 turnovers of their own to keep this to a 4-point game on the road. So, I think moving forward for Iowa, for them to be able to compete here against an Iowa State team that's played as well as they have, it's super encouraging. Like Iowa State didn't have the best week, I wouldn't say. They weren't super efficient this week. Obviously, we expected a dip at some point, but the offense wasn't what we've come accustomed to seeing. Even yesterday against Eastern Illinois, I believe they were 44-point favorites in this game, and they were 4 for 23 from 3, to 17%. Only won by 25. So a little bit of a different look from Iowa State this week, but nonetheless, they're still sitting at 11-0. They've still been super impressive. So that game was interesting, though. I think it just shows that Iowa is going to be able to compete. I think it just shows that their floor is high, the ceiling, like we've kind of talked about. I'm not really sure. I know, Cody, you've had your opinion has at least simmered a little bit on them, but it's not as high as maybe it once was. And then I think the other thing for me this week, we saw Xavier Lee actually have a decent week, right? He actually made some shots, which I think all Gator fans are going to be thrilled about. He still only shot 1 for 7 from 3 against UConn on Tuesday, but then followed that up with 4 for 7 from behind the arc on Saturday against George Washington. And, he averaged 21.5 for the week, 22 for the week. So, some positive trending there for Xavier Lee. If he can continue to make some shots, get some confidence, I think this will be huge for him. If he's able to kind of hit his stride through this week and lead that into conference play, maybe we'll feel a little bit different about this Florida team. But definitely something positive out of Gainesville, despite the loss to UConn this week.
Yeah, it was good to see him kind of get on the right track. Another game I want to shout out is the BYU Clemson game. It seemed like Clemson was maybe going to pull off an upset there, and then BYU had a nice comeback. Dabansa has been phenomenal all year, and he was very good that game too. as well down the stretch. But I really love that game. We're going to transition a little bit here. Cody, what are some of the teams that have maybe underperformed or overperformed, rather? Some teams that, like, going into the season you weren't too sure about, but now they've been playing very well and they kind of caught your eye.
Yeah, before I get into that, I don't think we can get through this without shouting out the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Like,
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's been pretty unbelievable what they've been able to do. Because I mean, this wasn't a team that I was wrong about, but it is a team that's overperforming. Like, I was high on this team coming into the year, but I was not this high on them. I thought they could get themselves to like 7-8 seed territory, be like maybe in the high 20s, low 30s in KenPom by the time the season ended. Like, they worked themselves all the way up to 21 with just a dominant week. They probably had the best week of any team in the country this week over, beat Wisconsin by 30 at home in what was ideally like not the greatest matchup for their defense. They just suffocated Wisconsin, and then won at Illinois. They scored hyper efficiently, and they just have a clone of Peyton Sanford on their team with his brother Price. I mean, he went on an absolute vintage Peyton Sanford heater at Iowa. Like, that was one of my favorite players to watch before obviously he's gone now. But I mean, Price Sanford, I think he finished with 26 in the first half, and he just completely changed the dynamic for that entire game. Like, the gravity that was brought to him, and it kind of just opened up everyone else's game. And particularly it opened up a guy down the stretch who we haven't seen that much of, and that was Jared Garcia. His ability to score at the rim, score off cuts. They had to play him one-on-one, and he was kind of just going to his bully ball style. And he scored 10 points in 14 minutes, 4 for 8 from the floor. He was fantastic. Obviously this is an offense that I think both of us were really high on. They're like extremely tough to guard. It kind of just came down to like, can they take care of the basketball? It kind of came down to how good Sam Hoiberg and Jamarcus Lawrence can be with the ball in their hands, and they've passed the test. They've been just fine, and they can still run stuff through Rink Mast if the guards aren't playing as well as they need to play. Like, this is just a team that has been ridiculously good on the offensive end, and the defense has been very good as well. I don't think teams are making like a ton of shots against them right now. I mean, Illinois went 10 for 29 from 3. They're obviously susceptible to the 3 ball, and maybe there's going to be some regression there, but I think their defense is definitely better than what everyone gave them credit for. Like, the point of attack defenders, I think people were a little bit lower on, but some guys have really stepped up. Like, Hoiberg is obviously a fantastic point of attack defender. Cale Jacobson off the bench, Buke DeGel at the 4 is a good defender, and then obviously Garcia's in there as a defender as well. So yeah, they've been awesome. I think they're up to 15th in the AP poll now, so definitely worth shouting them. I don't know if you guys want to say a couple words on them before I get into this other stuff.
Yeah,
Marcus, go ahead.
No, I mean, you kind of took it all. I mean, Price Sanford was absurd the other day, and pair that with kind of the steadiness that you get from Rink Mast, and Nebraska has really become quite dangerous. As crazy as that is to say, right? I mean, they're sitting at, are they 11-0?
11-0. 14 game win streak, I believe. I think it's 14 now.
What, from winning those 3 games out in
college basketball crown? They have the longest win.
That's
actually
terrible.
15, longest win streak in the country.
Yeah, those 4 games or whatever they won out there don't count. But I mean, yeah, it's been really impressive, and I'm still like pumping the brakes a little bit because I want to see it through Big Ten play. But if we're sitting here, 3 weeks from now, and they've still continued to go on a heater and they've only lost like a game or 2, I may feel a little bit differently. But I still don't really. I mean, we saw this Nebraska team last year, right? They start pretty well in Big Ten play and then went on to lose like 9 straight.
They lost a lot. It comes from the shooting variance. Like, teams are just there's going to be a stretch where teams just make shots at a super high clip against them, and I think they're more like. I think they can sustain it a little bit better with how good their offense is. Like, they didn't have an offense that could really combat it last year, so I think that's kind of the reason why they can hang around in shootouts now. I think is the biggest difference.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So we'll see kind of what they have coming. I don't know what their schedule looks like coming up. I know we'll get kind of a break in the schedule. They probably have like a couple bye games here, but they got Michigan State to open up the new year. So definitely one to circle on the calendar there.
Yeah, I've bought into the Nebraska Cornhuskers hype. I love watching this team play. I love seeing them knock down shots. It's just an exciting, fun style of basketball.
This isn't Fred Hoiberg's Chicago Bulls. Let's say that.
Yeah,
No.
But I am very excited to continue watching this team play and hopefully have some success in the Big Ten. I think it'd be cool to kind of see them as maybe a 4 or 5, maybe even a 3 seed somehow in the tournament. That would be awesome.
They're in that territory right now.
Yeah,
I think they
right
absolutely
now,
are.
so.
I mean, if they could have a fortunate run in the Big Ten, like there is a world. There's a team every year that starts the year unranked and gets themselves into a top 3 seed range. I think that it might end up being Vanderbilt this year. They weren't ranked to start the year, right? So I think it's
so.
like 2 candidates right now are Vanderbilt and Nebraska. Like it's a real conversation to have. Like both teams have actually been that good. So I'm super impressed.
Cody, what other teams did you want to throw out there that have overperformed or caught your eye?
Yeah, I'm going to throw out just some teams that I was just flat out wrong about. Like obviously Michigan has caught everyone's eye, but I was definitely wrong about them. We talked about them in like team previews and stuff. I didn't view them as having a championship ceiling because of one deficiency that I thought they had, and I just didn't think they could shoot the ball, and I didn't think they could take care of the ball, and they've proven me wrong really in both areas. They are just on an absolute heater shooting the ball right now. They want to shoot out against Maryland of all teams. Maryland put up 50 points in the first half, but it didn't really matter because Michigan's offense was just way too much for them. They put up 100 points again, scored 101, won 101 to 83. The fact that they were 20-point favorites on the road in a Big Ten game is kind of insane. Just insane levels to where they've gotten to. 12 of 19 from 3 in that game. The real difference has been Yaxel Lendeborg's shooting ability. I mean, he's taken more threes than he's taken twos this season, and he's been hyper efficient. It's been extremely impressive. And then just a few other guys that have been knocking it down at a high clip, like Trey McKinney's been really good, and Elliot Cadeau is making shots at a high clip. I think he's a 40% shooter right now. It's pretty insane. He just looks way more confident. And I think they've talked about that with Dusty May. They're trying to put him just in better spots shooting wise to succeed. I think a lot of the shots that he was taking at North Carolina were ones that, guys were just going under screens and he was kind of hesitating to take those shots. But Dusty May has given him the green light. He said, you catch and you have space, like you shoot it right away. Like if you hesitate, it's probably not going to go in as often. And a lot of coaches say that obviously, but he's kind of just not thinking about it and firing it away, and it's working out for him. So this is a team that, if they shoot it at a high level, they're probably going to win the national championship with how dominant they are up front. So I was definitely wrong about them. Some other ones that I was wrong about, I think we can comfortably say we were both wrong about Seton Hall, or maybe even all 3 of us were wrong about Seton Hall. Their defense has been just awesome, flat out awesome. I think they've worked themselves to 12th in Ken Palm's defense right now. And the fact that they have a competent offense is, that's really all Shaheen Holloway needs, is a competent offense for his teams to have success. Like, look back at the first 2 years of Shaheen Holloway at Seton Hall. They weren't great offenses by any means, but they could defend at a super high level. They're number 1 in the country in block rate, led by Stephon Payne and Najai Hines, the 4-star freshman who's been just fantastic. So they're probably a top 5 or 6 team in the Big East right now. I think a lot of that is because the Big East is just not good, but I think they've kind of worked themselves up into, maybe even getting into the tournament. They could potentially be that 3rd team that makes the NCAA tournament out of the Big East. And somebody has to do it. Somebody has to kind of break out, and it could be Seton Hall with how good they've been so far. I was also wrong. I guess I can say this about Georgia. I mean, they've been pretty good so far. They haven't really played much of anybody. They didn't prove a ton to me at the Charleston Classic. They played Cincinnati. We'll talk about those guys in a few minutes with one particular person that's a part of that program. But they've been just fine. They've passed all the tests that they've had so far. They lost to Clemson in overtime, who's proven to be a good team. They've played a really rough schedule so far, and they've just kind of beaten the crap out of all of those teams because they play super fast, have a ton of athleticism. Those are the type of teams that are going to have success there. But so far, Georgia has proven me wrong. I thought they were going to be like a bottom barrel SEC team, but they've proven to be potentially 9th or 10th in the league. So it's and that's also kind of a byproduct of the SEC being very down, and the bottom half of this SEC is rough this year. I don't really think is all that good at all. But yeah, they've proven me wrong. Then 3 teams that have proven me wrong because I thought they're going to be much better. I'll just mention those real quick. Obviously, Kentucky, I'm not going to talk about them anymore. They're injured right now. We need to see them in final form, but it has been a disappointment. Wisconsin, I guess I was a little bit wrong about. They've been blown out in their two biggest tests. Their defense just isn't really cutting it up front. They're just kind of being attacked by more athletic teams, and more like dynamic dribble creating offenses have given them a tough time. Like AJ DeBansa just absolutely killed them when he wasn't in foul trouble, and Nebraska obviously torched them. And then Kansas State, I think I was somewhat wrong about. I thought their defense was going to be much better. They're outside the top 100 in KenPom right now. I was kind of just trusting Jerome Tang's defensive track record since he left Baylor. He had 3 top 40 defenses, and now it's just not really coming together there. They just don't have enough rim protection and really good enough defenders on the wing either. Their offense has been good, but their defense isn't really picking up the slack. So, yeah, those are 3 teams that I've expected more out of, but I'm holding out some hope, at least for Wisconsin and Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Marcus, anyone you want to throw out, maybe overperformed or underperformed, just has surprised you so far this season?
I mean, I'll own it too. I won't talk too much about it, but I was very wrong about Seton Hall. I was on the stand ready to fire Shaheen Holloway, and they've been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, weren't we all?
Their only loss has been to USC by 2. Like they've not that they've played like a ridiculous schedule, but they have solid wins on there. They beat NC State. They beat Kansas State, who, like you just said, they've underperformed. They beat Rutgers, who we have been right about.
I would say that too. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, at least we can give ourselves some credit there. We've been right about
Right.
it. Not good. Like they didn't even cover against UMaine. So anyway, so Seton Hall, they've overperformed for sure. Another one that I was wrong about, at least up to this point, I'm still not quite there yet, and that's LSU. I was fully expecting them to lose. If they lost to SMU over the weekend, it was like, okay, now they're sitting at what, 8-2. They lost their 2 biggest tests. They had just gone to overtime at Boston College, who, we know is not very good. And then that would have left their best win on their schedule to be against like DePaul or Drake. Like, not great wins at all, but they picked up a nice 12-point win over SMU over the weekend. I still am not there yet, but I've been wrong about them up to this point. They have 9 wins, which is more than they had last year, right? I mean, what did they win last year?
It wasn't pretty last year.
No. So I mean, they've been better than I think I expected. I'm still not ready to buy it yet, but I think they can beat up on some of the, not beat up, but I think they can take care of business against some of the pretty weak teams in the bottom of the SEC this year. Like you were saying, it's pretty bad at the bottom. There are a couple teams I want to throw out there for underperformers, not necessarily teams that we thought were going to be all world per se, but just teams that typically just have good programs, are well run, good, well coached, and typically at least have a high enough floor. The first of those coming in the Big East. Well, I guess I'll just throw 2 Big East teams out there, and that's Creighton and Marquette. Creighton sitting at 5-5. They haven't really beaten anybody other than Oregon, who is the 3rd team on my list.
We were right about that team.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the 3rd team on my list of it's a program that typically at least can stay afloat, and they've lost every big game they've had on their schedule. Like they lost to Auburn, San Diego State, Creighton, USC, and UCLA. They were 4-0 and then went to 4-5 in the snap of a finger. And then you got Marquette, who typically has, another team with a higher floor, well coached. Just the way they play kind of leads to that. But I watched their game against Valparaiso, from like the 10-minute mark on a couple weeks ago, and they had to gut out that game in overtime, which at home. Valparaiso actually played shockingly well.
I was about to say, I tip my cap to you for watching that.
They were playing well. There was a D2 transfer for Valparaiso that was kind of taking care of business. I forget what his name was, but this sounds like the guy, Brody Whitaker. I think he hit a few big shots down the stretch. But I just think this Marquette team is in the middle of the pack in that Big East, along with Creighton, where they just don't have enough. As we kind of expected. I think Shaka Smart is maybe learning his lesson a little bit, but I still don't know if he's going to give in to this whole portal thing. Like, I would be more surprised if he just gets out of or I would be more expecting him to get out of coaching than I would to see him dip into the portal. So we'll see what happens there. But right, they're 5-6 with losses to Purdue, Wisconsin, Dayton, Maryland, Oklahoma, and Indiana. And a few pretty lopsided losses. At least 3 of those losses are by 20 points plus. So Marquette not in a great spot at the moment.
Yeah. It is interesting to think of, how well Seton Hall has performed, and they weren't really on our radar at all, but just because of recent years, they turned some things around, and now they find themselves maybe the top half of the Big East, which is great, honestly. But we're going to transition into, Cody kind of already hinted at it, but our hot seat. Cody, I know who you're going to mention here right out of the gate, but I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I'm not going to rag on him anymore, but I think the numbers kind of speak for itself with what's going on in Cincinnati right now. And, I think everyone kind of knows what the deal is here with Wes Miller. If he doesn't gain any traction in the Big 12 this year, if he doesn't find a way to make the tournament, he's getting fired. I think everyone kind of understands what's going on there. And it's just, I think they're the third worst power conference offense right now. I believe they sit at 238th in KenPom in adjusted offense. That's very hard to do as a power conference team. I forget who the other 2 teams behind them are. I think it's Boston College and Georgia Tech are the 2 teams sitting behind them right now. And I think Rutgers is 45 spots ahead of them in adjusted offense right now. That's kind of saying something. Like, your budget is significantly higher than Rutgers. Like, just find a way to put together a good offense. It's on him at this point with who he's bringing in for recruits. Like, he brought in a front court of, Baba Miller's been fine, but Mustafa Cham, just like, he's obviously more of a defensive piece, and that's what Wes Miller's looking for. He was kind of hoping that the offensive upside would come along, but if his own center is not going to generate rim attempts at a high level, like along with the rest of this team, like, your offense just isn't going to be good. They don't do anything well in the 4 factors, like effective field goal percentage outside of the top 200, turnover percentage 275th. They don't even get offensive rebounds. Like, this is realistically an athletic team that can get on the glass. They're 219th nationally in offensive rebound rate, and they haven't really played like a crazy schedule. So it's just, this is the worst off. Like, he's outdone himself really with how poor this offense has been. Like, last year, we thought the offense was a disaster. It wasn't even close to where we're at right now. So he needs to find a way to figure it out. Maybe he gets Jizzle James back. Like, he's been with the team for the last couple weeks. Maybe he gets Jalen Haynes back, a guy that I'm actually like fairly high on coming into the mix and really improving their shot diet, getting to the rim, getting to the foul line. I think that's going to be really big for their offense, but I don't think he's program changing as a player by any means. Jizzle James isn't really either. So definitely Wes Miller is on the hottest of hot seats that definitely this season. And then Marcus, do you have any thoughts on that? And then we can kind of just boomerang it, go back and forth.
Yeah, he's been on the list for as long as this podcast has been in existence.
Yeah.
We're at a year and 2 months, just about. So not really much to add. Just like, at what point is the product going to trigger a move, right? You'd think soon enough, but I guess not yet. Still holding out hope for the Cincinnati Bearcats, but I guess just to go into one of the names I had, I have Kim English on the list at Providence. Things just haven't really been pretty, particularly on the defensive end. There aren't many teams below them I don't have the exact number. I know there are about 4 or 5, I think, in the Power 5 ranks that are below them in KenPom adjusted defensive efficiency. I know Pittsburgh is in there. I know that Utah is in there. I'm not sure who else? Penn State, I think. I don't know if there are any others other than that, but they're sitting at 148 in defense, and it just hasn't been pretty, right? They've given up over 90 in 5 games. They've given up over 100 3 times. They've allowed career nights to I don't know how many players at this point, probably 12 different players in 12 games. It just is not a pretty product on the defensive end. Like you mentioned, that game against Butler on Saturday was really fun, but 113 points, obviously in double overtime, but even still, gave up 89 in regulation to Butler. I don't see much changing here. They're 7-5, through non-conference play, and now one conference game. It's not working, I don't think, and I think they're going to have to eventually move on from him. I don't necessarily think it's going to be like mid-season here, but I don't really expect a great season from Providence. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, by the end of the season, they're closing the door on the Kim English chapter.
Yeah, the thing about Wes Miller is the defense is like great. It's sensational, but it always has been. And the offense is just, I don't know. I figured he could figure it out by now. It's kind of, I mean, I'm going to be flat out. It's just kind of disappointing that he hasn't. But anyone else we want to throw out there on the hot seat?
Yeah, I have a few. And just to mention, like, Providence defense, like on Torvik, they're the second worst power conference defense, only Penn State behind them. I know Ken Palm's a little bit higher on them, but they're 191st in defense and adjusted defense right now. It's pretty rough. The offense has been pretty good. Like Jason Edwards, Stephon Vox has been really good. Jalen Sellers had a really good game the other day. So they have the offensive pieces. It's just we did kind of have issues with this guard group and how they were going to defend because, Oswin could only really do so much as a rim protector, and they just don't have really any other pieces right now.
I want you to pronounce that last name, though.
I always hear it, and then when we get on here, I forget how to pronounce it. Or Wednesday or something. I don't know.
You're gonna have to sit in front of a mirror and it
gets me every time. So I'm just not even going to bother anymore. But he's actually been the bright spot of the defense. Nobody else really has. So I think they give Kim English one more year because of the offensive improvements. They brought in a new offensive coordinator to kind of run everything, and it's more modernized. It's more of a pace and space kind of offense, and it's really worked out. So just kind of marry that with some good wing defenders, and I think they can be in a decent spot. But yeah, I mean, if it goes miserably in Big East play, then yeah, he's probably gone. A couple other names to throw out there. I still think Jake Diebler's on the hot seat. They've been fine so far this season, but I don't think it's been up to Ohio State expectations, and they still haven't really played like a massive game yet. Lost at home to Illinois. They kind of got shredded on the defensive end, despite like an awesome performance from Bruce Thornton. I think he had 28 in the first half, didn't miss a shot. Or missed one shot or something. He missed a heat check. But I do think Diebler's on the hot seat. I don't think they've really done enough yet. They're going to have to prove a lot in Big Ten play if he wants to hang around. I think Mike Rhodes is on the hot seat still. They don't have the backbone of a Mike Rhodes team, and that's on the defensive end. Their offense has been okay, but they're the only power conference defense that is worse than Providence right now. So I think they're in a pretty bad spot, despite almost beating Michigan State at home the other day. Jeff Capel's definitely on the hot seat. I mean, they haven't performed really on either end. They're not healthy. They haven't had Deshaun Jackson all year, but I think if you need Deshaun Jackson to come in and provide a spark, I think that's kind of shows where your team is at this point in time. So Jeff Capel's definitely in trouble, especially after last year with the talent on that roster with Jalen Lowe and Ish Leggett and some of those other pieces that they had, and them just completely like falling on their face in ACC play after starting off the year so well is just been a real disappointment last year and this year. Then one other one, I mean, I think Steve Peichel has to be on the hot seat after what happened last year with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey on his team, not making the tournament and really not being in the conversation to make the tournament.
No.
And then
they didn't make the Big Ten tournament even.
No, they made it.
Did they?
They were. I think they made it. They played USC and lost in like double overtime. Like
might as well
they
not.
made it because Nebraska lost like 6 in a row to end the season, and Nebraska was a potential at-large team. They didn't make their Big Ten tournament, and Rutgers got in for that. But
Yeah.
still, I mean, they were in the conversation to miss the Big Ten tournament with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey on their roster. It wasn't a Steve Peichel roster outside of that, obviously. I mean, he put it together, but it wasn't the typical Peichel roster. And this year they look like a mid-major. So it's not great what's going on there. They don't really have the budget, but despite that, you've got to be able to put out somewhat of a competitive product, and he's failed to do that.
Marcus, anyone you want to put on the hot seat before we look at the week ahead?
Yeah, I'll throw one more name out there. And we've kind of been on this one for a bit as well. And despite their big win last week in the ACC SEC Challenge, I still think that Red Autry's on the hot seat, especially following that loss to Hofstra on Saturday by 1 at home. It's just not pretty. And they also are like worse than the country in free throw percentage. I mean, they might just want to hire a new free throw shooting coach to begin with. I think as a team, they're like 56% or something like that. Led by, Kyan Anthony's shooting at like 52% himself.
Or just don't recruit William Kyle.
That
could be another reason.
That would definitely put things in the right direction.
So, I think that I don't see this situation really getting any better. Donnie Freeman is hurt again, and I don't really know what his status is, and that's kind of all there is to it. He was really good through 4 games for them and hasn't played since, November 18th now. So I think Red Autry is kind of set up for failure right now, and it's just not going to look good, I don't think, especially in a much improved ACC.
Yeah, I kind of want to address the free throw shooting as a whole. I know you guys are more numbers guys, but it seems like to me, it's been pretty bad this year. Can you guys comment on that? Has it been worse this year? Is it just always kind of bad?
You mean like across the country?
Across the country. Every game I watch, I feel like there's a lot of missed free throws.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of have some issues with how college kids shoot free throws. There's obviously some guys that just couldn't throw a beach ball in the ocean, but there's obviously some other guys that are very confident.
Man. Come on.
Yeah, the wind got that one and pushed it back to the land. But there's always a couple guys not on every team, but I think a guy like Carson Tout at Notre Dame isn't really shooting free throws well, and he's never really learned to shoot free throws well. Like he's a candidate as a guy to let's just try underhand and see what happens. I don't know if he's tried it in a game. Actually, yeah, I don't think he has at all, but I don't know if he's tried it in practice or anything like that. But I think those are some of the guys that kind of hold back the free throw shooting across the country. Some guys that just shoot it in the high 30s, or even like William Kyle's 49% right now. And it's just, there's always a couple of those guys on every team kind of holding the team back in that regard. Like you don't see that at the pro level. Like at the pro level, everyone's making at least like a 60% clip. There's a few guys in the 50s, but outside of that, like if you're not shooting over 74, 75%, like you're a below average free throw shooter.
I was about to say, you have Andres Biedrins back in the day shooting like 9% or whatever it was.
He shot didn't he shoot like 20%? Or yeah, I think it was like 10% one year.
It was.
They don't have those in the league anymore.
He's no Mitchell Robinson right now.
He's pretty bad. Let's look at.
Wasn't he like 3 for 7? He was like 3 for 17. Come on.
Oh, I didn't realize.
It's not great. Actually, free throw percentage right now is 71.6% across the country. Believe it or not, it's actually not terrible. It's like right on par with where it typically is. Last year was 72.1. This year's 71.6. Like missing a few more, but I don't think it's anything crazy.
Yeah, maybe it's just the games I've watched. I've noticed there's a lot of missed.
You watch too much.
You gotta stop watching Rutgers, man.
Too much Syracuse basketball. I think that's it. But we're gonna look at the week ahead. What games excite you guys for this upcoming week? Cody, what game do you have circled on the calendar?
Not much until Saturday, really. I know like Big East play kind of like gets into full swing this week. Butler at UConn tomorrow. Like, kind of need to see if Butler can be a real competitor in the Big East. They've been pretty good. Obviously, that win over Providence isn't like program changing by any means, but if they can compete with UConn, like I think they can show that they're a candidate to be the third or fourth best team in this league. So that's definitely an exciting game. Then conference play kind of across some of the mid-major leagues gets going as well. It's just kind of crazy that, conference play is already getting going, like non-cons basically out the door. There are some teams there are some leagues that have already finished their non-con stuff and are officially getting into conference play at this point. But, Nova and Wisconsin on Friday, I think is kind of an interesting game. Villanova kind of trying to prove that they can be the third best team in the Big East as well. Like, I think at this point in time, like they definitely are, but they kind of need to prove it against a quality competitor. They hung in there with BYU on opening night. Since then, haven't really been tested all that much. And then Wisconsin obviously needs to bounce back in a big spot after they're, getting completely dominated in their two biggest games of the season. Then Saturday, obviously a great slate: Kentucky, St. John's, Arkansas, Houston. I'm very interested to see. I think we're going to find out how real Arkansas is against a defense that can really just like bog the game down, and can Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas be the backcourt that can take John Calipari to another Final Four?
All right, Marcus, what games do you like? What do you have circled?
Yeah. I think like Seton Hall Providence on Friday is kind of interesting. I think this game's at Providence, I believe. I'm intrigued to see how Seton Hall shows up here defensively against the Providence offense that's been pretty good. And then, can they pick apart this lackluster Providence defense? I think that'll be interesting to monitor. And then, like Cody said, there's a lot of good games on Saturday that we're looking forward to. I think one tomorrow to watch is Tennessee Louisville. Tennessee trying to kind of circle the wagons after 3 straight losses, one of those being to Syracuse. They've got Louisville coming to their gym. There must be a line out for it. I don't know what it is, but I imagine
Louisville's favorite on the road.
I imagine it's pretty close. Yeah. So, that'll be an interesting game. And then come to Saturday, a lot of good games. There's like the Kentucky St. John's game, I think has intrigue, of course. Like you said, Houston and Arkansas, North Carolina, Ohio State. There's just a lot of like top level programs that are going to be playing historically that on Saturday that makes for kind of a lot of fun leading into a pretty boring Christmas week where there's no games. So looking forward to, this last week before we get a little bit of a break.
Yeah, I gotta say North Carolina and Ohio State is probably my game of the week, the one I'm most looking forward to. Caleb Wilson and Bruce Thornton, a lot of star power. I love watching that kind of stuff. But anything we want to add before we wrap things up?
Man, I know Marcus can get behind watching Bruce Thornton play basketball. So, I think he's going to be pretty excited for that game too.
Absolutely. Right, Marcus? All right, we'll wrap things up here. As always, thank you for tuning in to the Mainly Hoops podcast.